spring of 2015, in the heart of London's Hatton Garden district, one of the most famous crimes in history took place. This was no ordinary burglary, but a meticulously planned and astonishingly precise operation carried out by seasoned criminals. Men who had spent decades in the underworld, but were already well past their prime. The event later became known as the Hatton Garden burglary, inspiring films, books, and documentaries across the globe. The roots of the crime began with a simple conversation among aging criminals about one last big job. Their leader was 76-year-old Brian Reader, known in the underworld as the Master. He had a long reputation as a skilled thief, previously linked to the infamous Brinks Matt Kate. At his side was 67-year-old Terry Perkins, an experienced safecracker, despite suffering from heart disease. 75-year-old John Kenny Collins, trusted for surveillance and transportation, and 60-year-old Daniel Jones, a nimble criminal famed for scaling walls and slipping through tight spaces. Later, a few younger accomplices joined, making the team even stronger. Their target was one of the most secure locations in London, the Hatton Garden Safe Deposit Building. Hatton Garden itself was the very heart of London's jewelry and diamond trade, a place where wealthy individuals, major businessmen, and collectors stored their fortunes. With its heavy iron doors, state-of-the-art alarm systems, and 24-hour surveillance, the safe deposit was considered virtually impenetrable. But for these criminals, the very word impossible was motivation. Knowing they couldn't disable the alarms, they decided to attack from the side by drilling through the concrete wall. The plan was bold, intricate, and required industrial-grade drills, wall-cutting tools, and heavy equipment. Timing was critical, so they chose the Easter holiday weekend, when offices were empty and security presence was lighter than usual. On the night of April 2nd, 2015, the gang loaded their tools into a white van, donned masks and gloves, and entered the building through a side entrance. Their plan was to move the lift one floor up, climb down the shaft, and drill directly into the vault wall. They began their work, but the concrete nearly half a meter thick proved tougher than expected. Their tools overheated and failed, forcing the gang to retreat, but they refused to give up. Determined that this would be their final job, they returned on April 4th. This time, everything went according to plan. Using their drills, they carved a hole measuring about 50 by 75 centimeters. Daniel Jones was the first to crawl through, and by flashlight he saw what looked like a scene from a movie. Rows upon rows of metal safety deposit boxers stretching into the darkness. The gang set to work, prying open and drilling into the boxers. Some they smashed apart, others they carefully cut open. Inside lay stacks of cash, gold, diamonds, and priceless jewelry. They stuffed everything into heavy bags, working tirelessly through the night. By dawn, they had opened nearly 200 boxers, looting valuables worth over £14 million, one of the largest thefts in British history. At around 6 a.m., they carried the heavy bags back to their van and drove through the quiet London streets as if nothing had happened. For them, everything seemed flawless, as though they had become invisible criminals. But there is no such thing as the perfect crime. When police arrived at the scene, they were stunned by the hole in the wall, the ransacked vault, and the missing fortune. It was clear this was no ordinary burglary, yet was a masterfully executed operation. Yet the gang had made one crucial mistake. They hadn't managed to disable all the CCTV cameras. Some surviving footage showed the blurred silhouettes of elderly men with gray hair entering the building. A massive investigation was launched. Phone calls were traced, vehicles tracked, surveillance networks analyzed. It wasn't long before Brian Reader and his crew emerged as prime suspects. In May 2015, police carried out a series of raids. Inside the gang's homes, they discovered large amounts of cash, stolen jewelry, and part of the missing loot. The men were arrested, and in court, there was no escaping the evidence. Most were sentenced to between 7 and 10 years in prison. Brian Reader, due to poor health, was released earlier, but he went down in history as London's oldest crime boss. The Hatton Garden burglary was not just a robbery, it became a legendary chapter in criminal history, a striking example of human willpower, patience, and cunning. What shocked the world most was not just the value of the stolen goods, but the fact that such a daring crime was carried out by men in their 60s and 70s. They relied not on modern technology, but on old-school skills and experience. Public opinion was divided. Some hailed them as criminal masterminds, while others mocked them as bumbling old men. But one thing is certain: this heist is forever written into history, securing its place among London's most notorious legends. This was just the beginning. The most mysterious and shocking crime stories are still ahead. Subscribe to Crime Flow Narratives and be among the first to uncover what comes next.